Welcome to Roundtable Decision. I'm your host, Wyatt Bergenoff, and for today's video is more of a spontaneous video because we all know that in general colleges are seen as more liberal leaning or left leaning for politics and what they try to persuade students in colleges to do, because they're almost a breeding ground for liberal or leftist ideas, and that's what a lot of conservative media especially has been talking about. And according to a recent study, and in the Washington Post headline you can see here, it states, liberal professors outnumber conservatives nearly 12 to 1. So you might be thinking, why is this video more spontaneous? Well, today I was going to class, and I'm going to a community college and plan to go to university after I finish with the basic courses. And while I was going to class, I'll just explain the situation. So this guy walks past me, and I don't really think much of it. Many people walk past me. Anyway, but he goes up to this other guy, he walks a little bit close to him, and he flashes, the OK sign, which we've all known. And I knew couple weeks ago that the ADL, Finding Hate for Good, a organization, declared the OK sign a white supremacist and a no-no sign, and a sign that is a sign of white supremacy, as you can see from these pictures below, from what they state and their reasoning for it, which I'll explain in a little bit. But before I knew it was a hate symbol and something you shouldn't really do, my brother and I used to play a game, and I think many other people have played this game before, where you would flash this symbol, and if they were to look, you would be able to punch them. And that was just a silly game we would always play with each other, and we still sometimes do. And that was pretty much what the guy was doing to his friend, or who I assume was his friend, or at least a classmate of his, when he walked by and showed the symbol. But and this is what makes me think he was more of a classmate, he seemed rather annoyed with it and told the other guy that this was a hate symbol and something he shouldn't really do. And obviously at first I thought he may have been sarcastic, because I do live in Texas, and many people find that the OK sign being racist more of a rolling of the eyes moment than they actually believe it. And even though I'm in college, I still kind of have that mindset, and that may just be because I'm Texan, or maybe because I'm more conservative leaning, blah, 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 blah. But I thought that was what at first he was doing. But as the conversation went further, and I'm still walking behind these two people, that he seemed more rather serious about it and told the other guy to look it up and to be more aware of what that symbol is. And the other guy kind of walked off, and I didn't really tell what he was doing, but he seemed rather confused by the whole situation. So I thought I would look up it, because I remember the ADL a couple months ago releasing this as being a symbol of hate, and I've heard on the radio and some other YouTubers I listened to talk about it at the time, but I never really looked into it as a whole. So according to the ADL, and I'm reading from their page here, it states, the OK hand gesture, in which the thumb and index finger touch while the other fingers of the hand are held outstretched, is an obvious and ancient gesture that has arisen in many countries over the years with different meanings. Today, in the usage that dates to at least as early as the 17th century Great Britain, it was most commonly signals understanding, consent, approval, or well-being. Since the early 1800s, gesture increasingly became associated with the word OK and its abbreviation OK. The gesture is also important in the Hindu and Buddhist worlds, as well as in yoga, where it is known as the Murder or Viktra Murda, and I probably pronounced that all really wrong. A symbol of inner perfection, the OK hand gesture also forms part of the basis for a number of the words or concepts in American Sign Language. And now I'll read where they cite their OK symbol as being a gesture of hate, because that was more of a history behind the word, which I didn't know at first, but I still think it's important. But anyway, going to why it is a hate symbol, we'll read from here. In 2017, the OK hand gesture acquired a new and different significance thanks to the hoax by members of the website 4chan. Real quick, before I keep reading, we all know of the website 4chan. Fortune is very special to say. I've never really been on Fortune that much, but I know about Fortune. And Fortune is known to be many things, but one thing it's not really known for is super serious. Even though there has been people who have banded together to solve random puzzles random puzzles, or come out against people, dox people, is kind of what Fortune's been known for as well. They're not really a huge bunch of a serious website that you would say a governmental website or something of that stance would be. So again, reading from the article, taking that into note, to falsely promote the jester as a hate symbol, claiming that the jester represented the letters WP for white power. The OK Jester hoax was merely the least in a series of similar Fortune hoax using various inconvenient symbols in each case. The hoaxers hoped that the media and liberals would overreact by condemning a common image as white supremacists. So again, that's kind of their Fortune, and they go on and on to explain in particular why they think it's from a white supremacy movement. But I thought I would mainly talk about that issue as a whole. And you can read the whole article if you want more context behind it. As you can see that there's the W and a P highlighted in this graph of the white supremacist gesture and hate symbol that this guy did to his other friend in college. But the big thing about this is that it started off from being a Fortune hoax, or even if it was the fact that it was from Fortune brings very much of a weird scenario to the whole stories itself. It's kind of like the past when teachers said do not use any sources from Wikipedia, do not even look at Wikipedia, do not even cite Wikipedia, don't even post a single sentence from Wikipedia in your paper, in your PowerPoint, or in your presentation, in your poster, blah, blah, blah. All these things, you cannot use Wikipedia at all. That was a common thing throughout my schooling experience. That would be like teachers saying that now you can use Wikipedia, or now you can use Fortune as evidence for your historically written paper or for your research paper that is graded very heavily in your high school experience, as it was for me. But this isn't the only thing what's made me realize that I am a college student, because I visited other four-year major universities such as St. Edward's in Austin and Texas. And I knew going into it that it was in a liberal area, as Austin is very liberal stance compared to other areas within Texas what are way more conservative leaning. But going into the college, I still had an open mind, because St. Edward's is technically a Catholic university. And under technically, I'll have abbreviations, because I think that it being called a Catholic university is rather wrong with my personal stance of what a Catholic university should be. And there were several gestures throughout my college tour that kind of leaned towards it being more not a traditional Catholic university, or more just left-leaning in general, as I originally started this video on. One of those things was a LGBT, club table they had to where they could ask questions about their club, or join their club, or take some candy, as they were offering free candies throughout the college tour. And obviously, I'm not against the LGBT movement. I'm more neutral of the entire issue. But obviously, just seeing that as a club brought a lot of questions with the whole university experience. With the whole university experience. But the big thing was when I went to the church on the campus, as again, it's a Catholic university, they had symbols of unite with Islam, the LGBT flag on the church. And obviously, I want to make it very clear, I'm not against the LGBT movement. I'm more neutral of the entire issue. And as a religious person myself, I don't necessarily support the action of the LGBT movement, but I do support the individual person being able to make their stance. As an American, we should all support that as their chance, and we shouldn't go against everything what's stated with that. But seeing the LGBT flag and unite with Islam on a Catholic church within a Catholic university was rather shocking as a stance itself. So going back to the article where I originally started this issue on, it talks about how colleges are more and more left-leaning as a whole, with the published journal and the Econ Journalist Watch last month. And this was in October of 2016, so obviously this is now 3 years old, 3 years and 1 month old. Anyway, but it says, published in the Econ Journal Watch last month, the study looks at faculty voter registration at 40 leading universities and finds out that 7,243 professors are Democrat, outnumbering the Republicans 3,623 to 314, or by a ratio of 11.5 to 1. The study comes after a tumultuous few years at American colleges and universities, marked by campus race protests and conservative speakers and a popularization of the phrase such as trigger warnings and safe spaces. So I'm not going to read this whole article, as I'm going to end my spontaneous video with another story at another college. So on these tours, I run more of the more all-day tours, so I'm able to sit in a class and just kind of observe how the teachers teach and how the students react with the teachers or react with each other, and all the other shenanigans would go into sitting in a class. So as I'm sitting in this class, and this is years ago, the professor starts randomly talking about Trump and the fact that CNN released a new article saying that they were going to team up with Fox News against some action or some words that Trump said during the issue. And obviously this is a couple years old. Actually, I think it's about 1.5 years old since I was at this university, so I don't remember in full details, but I could tell right away that she was not a fan of Trump. And obviously that's not a total turnoff for me in choosing a college, or because it's just one teacher out of a whole university. But it was rather interesting that professors are feeling like they have more and more actions to speak out in class against political issues, rather than teach students what's actually in their class. And in particular, that class was a public speaking class. So talking about Trump was in journalism and things like that doesn't really go into what public speaking class is supposed to be. And ironically enough, I was heading to public speaking class while this story originally started with seeing the OK sign this morning. So again, this is a long, more circular type of video, and more spontaneous, as I just kind of thought about, you know what, I am a college student, and some of these things that a lot of the conservative media has been shouting tends to be somewhat true, even though it's not as totally true as many people think, because I do think that conservatives are overblowing the issue as a whole. It does need to be talked about, and it does need to be observed, but it's not necessarily a world-ending situation. I hope you liked the video, and we'll come back for more.